When I first started reaching out to senior administrators about AI compliance, I was puzzled by their reaction. These are accomplished leaders, people who have managed countless reforms, yet my calls were often met with this wall of resistance. Emails would go unanswered. A superintendent I spoke to simply said, "Not another AI call," and hung up on me. It really didn't take long for me to realize the problem. They were drowning.
You've seen the subject lines, haven't you? Ready to revolutionize learning? You probably deleted an email with a similar promise just this morning. For superintendents and their teams, this promise of revolution has just become background noise. And after being burned by endless sales pitches, they've begun to assume, quite rationally, that anyone calling about AI is just another vendor with another revolutionary tool that's going to create far more problems than it could ever solve.
So let's try to cut through that noise. In this explainer, we're going to diagnose the real problem, which isn't the technology itself. We'll look at the sheer scale of your institution's vulnerability. We'll identify the pressure tactics being used against you. And then, most importantly, we'll lay out a clear, repeatable system that puts control back in your hands. It's a practical path forward. Let's be very clear. The core issue you're facing isn't about choosing the right AI tool. It's about surviving an onslaught of sophisticated sales tactics. Tactics that are specifically designed to bypass proper evaluation, and most critically, to shift all of the compliance risk directly onto your schools. And this was my key realization. The hostility wasn't actually about AI. It was a defense mechanism against a relentless siege. School leaders are in this constant state of alert, just trying to distinguish a genuine opportunity from a pitch that exploits knowledge gaps and creates these long-term liabilities. So you see, this is not a technology conversation. It's a governance and protection conversation. The real challenge isn't keeping up with AI features. It's building a firewall that protects your institution from vendors who are, quite frankly, more than happy to let you shoulder all the legal and operational risks. And that feeling of being exposed, it isn't just a feeling. The data shows that your anxiety is entirely justified. Let's take a look at the numbers that are fueling this vendor pressure cooker. In 2024, the global AI in education market hit nearly $6 billion. Now, that enormous amount of capital flows directly into sales teams whose primary job is to get you to sign a contract, plain and simple. But it's the rate of growth that's truly alarming. At over 31% annually, this isn't some stable market. It's an explosive one. And that means the pressure you feel today is going to be significantly more intense tomorrow. The urgency is real, but it's on their side, not yours. At the very same time, student adoption has completely outpaced institutional readiness. In just 1 year, usage is projected to jump from 2/3 of all students to over 90%. This creates a vacuum, a clear, demonstrable need that vendors are aggressively positioning their products to fill. And this is the central vulnerability. While 92% of students will soon be using AI, a UNESCO survey found that a staggering 90% of schools have no formal guidelines whatsoever for its use. This massive gap between adoption and policy is precisely where risk multiplies. And this vulnerability isn't evenly distributed. There's a stark equity gap. You see, well-resourced suburban districts are twice as likely to provide AI training. This leaves urban, rural, and high-poverty districts making incredibly complex procurement decisions with far, far less support. Meanwhile, only 19% of teachers report having any kind of AI policy at all, meaning the vast majority of educators are left to navigate this completely on their own. This policy vacuum exposes schools to some very serious compliance risks. Laws that govern student data privacy, like FERPA, or internet safety, like SEPA, were simply never written with AI in mind. These new tools create entirely new obligations around data processing and algorithmic decisions. And a vendor might just brush this off, but your institution holds the liability. So, of course, this vulnerability creates the perfect opening for the specific pressure tactics that vendors use. They are experts at exploiting this knowledge gap, the gap between their technical understanding and your institution's current capacity. I'm sure these tactics sound familiar. First, they stoke a fear of competitive disadvantage, telling you that your students will fall behind, which pressures you into rushed decisions. Second, they create artificial urgency with things like limited time pricing, designed specifically to bypass a proper legal and technical review. And third, they promise seamless integration, a phrase which often hides the reality that you're integrating their compliance burdens directly into your system. So how do you fight back?
Well, the answer isn't to become a machine learning engineer overnight. The answer is to stop playing their game and implement your own. It's about creating a repeatable system to regain control.
This really is the fundamental question every school leader is asking. How can you, with all of your other responsibilities, effectively safeguard your institution from risks you don't yet fully understand? The answer, thankfully, lies in process, not expertise. The solution is a system for vendor evaluation. It's a simple, repeatable process that forces every single vendor to meet your non-negotiable standards for things like transparency, privacy, and oversight. And the key is that this happens before a contract is ever even considered. You aren't just evaluating their product, you're evaluating their fitness to partner with your institution. And the shift, well, it changes everything. It changes the entire dynamic. The conversation is no longer about their flashy features, it's about their fundamental compliance with your rules. It moves you from the position of a passive consumer to an active gatekeeper of your institution's safety. You know, understanding this changed my entire approach. I realized that those administrators hanging up the phone weren't being obstructive, they were being responsible. They were protecting their schools. And that insight, that the real conversation needed to be about protection, not products, is what led me to develop practical tools instead of more theory. So let's make this concrete. A repeatable system isn't some abstract idea, it's a practical path forward with clear steps you can take as soon as this is over.
A systematic process can be as simple as a checklist. Before you even agree to a demo, you require the vendor to answer some very specific questions. Where does our data go? How do you verify your privacy claims? Who oversees your algorithm? What legal liability are we assuming? If they can't or won't answer, the conversation is over. It's as simple as that.
So here are 2 things you can do right now. First, if you are an administrator under this kind of pressure, you can request the free vendor evaluation checklist from my Stopgap Compliance Guide. And second, if you want more of these short, practical breakdowns focused on governance, not on product reviews, please subscribe for future insights.
I'll leave you with a final thought. In every sales call and every email, an evaluation is taking place. The only question is this: are you evaluating their fitness to serve your students, or are they evaluating your vulnerabilities to make a sale? The choice of who is in control is yours.